Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to G-Rod Grills. My name is Gerardo and this is my channel. If this is the first time you're here and you're into backyard barbecue on a variety of different grills, whether it's charcoal, pellet, or electric, then please consider subscribing because that's exactly what this channel is all about. Today we're going to be doing a brisket on the Kamado Joe Classic over some pecan wood and some Jealous Devil charcoal. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Are you ready to get going? Let's go! All right, so here we've got a full packer brisket. That means that the point end is attached to the flat end. So there's two different muscles. This guy's a rather large one. I think it was about 16, 17 pounds. It is a prime grade brisket as well. So it's gonna give us some really good marbling all the way through. What we're gonna do is pretty simple, and I'm gonna speed this up because it can take some time here. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to kind of clean this top part out. If you can see here, there's just a little bit of fat that's on here. I'm going to remove some of that, some of the silver skin. I'm also going to kind of carve out some of this thicker hard fat. The hard fat is not going to render, so we're going to carve out some of those pieces. And then on the fat cap side, I'm just going to trim this down to about 1/4 of an inch thick. And that's really your preference. This is backyard barbecue, so you can leave more of it if you want, or you can trim it all away if you'd like as well. It's really your preference. I like a nice little thin layer of fat through, which is what I'm going to do with this. So let's get going here. One thing I didn't mention and that I should mention is that this brisket is fully thawed out, but I did put it in the freezer for about 45 minutes before I started doing this. And what that does is it makes the fat harder, so that when you're using your knife, it doesn't slip around. Once it gets soft, it gets kind of almost mushy, and it's harder for the for you to kind of cut it away. Much easier when the fat is hard. All right, I don't know if you could see here, but my top is pretty much done here. There's still little bits of fat pockets, maybe a little tiny bit of silver skin, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. Not really necessary to clean it 100%. If you can get tighter than that, good on you. I just don't really have the full patience to do that, but you could probably clean up a little bit more on this one if you'd like. The idea is that you're going to make this as smooth and as more smoke friendly as possible, and we're going to try to make it as aerodynamic as we can. So on this end here, I'm going to be working on this kind of hard, really hard fat piece. What I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to carve out as much of it as I can, but without separating the two muscles. So I'm going to leave the point and the flat attached. This is all ugly hard fat. The other thing that I'm going to do is on this side, you can see where it was packaged or how it sits. I'm not sure what, there's nothing wrong with this meat, but it's just not very appetizing looking, and I'm just going to trim off just a slight bit, about 1/2 inch off of this all the way along, so that I can also see where my fat cap meets the rest of the meat, and that'll help me guide in terms of trimming the other side. So for that piece, I'm going to use a brisket slicing knife. This is a trick I learned from my buddy Darren at Ash Kickin' Barbecue. Easy way to trim using a slicer. I've never done it, so we're going to do it now. Just makes it easier to get nice long strokes. So just going to go ahead and trim using this. And you can see here, even just by cutting out the other piece, I can now see where that heel is and kind of nicely carve around it. It also gives us a good idea of how much fat cap we've got to work with here, and how much I have to trim down to get to 1/4 of an inch. I'm done cutting this piece out, and just to show you, that's how much I've trimmed out. So this was all the way out here. I've kind of trimmed it all back. You can see there's still quite a bit of fat left. The point is very fatty, so I wouldn't worry about it too much about how much you're cutting down. The one thing is you do want to keep the point and the flat attached. And you can see here, this is where it's starting to meet. I'm going to kind of trim this side about as much, where this flap of the point, of the flat, is going to lay down a little bit better, so that there isn't this big gap of that sits out here. You can trim as much or as little as you'd like here. Again, this is backyard barbecue. We're not competing with this. This is just the way I like to do mine in terms of how do I get mine nice and trimmed. But you don't have to take as much of it out. You should trim some of it out, but don't worry about trimming it all out. I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of this side, and then we'll flip her over and show you the other side. And there you have it. So now this side is also nicely trimmed. Didn't do as tight of a trim on this side. I don't really need to, I just wanted it to lay down flat. So I've trimmed out a lot of that fat. There's still quite a bit there. And you know, the goal, this is what I'm looking for. Nice little hump here that you're gonna go through. Now I'm gonna go ahead and flip it over, and we'll get the fat side to about 1/4 of an inch thick. So on this side here, and you can see where I've trimmed that edge, and that's really gonna help us out, kind of trim this back down a little bit. Now this piece here, I can almost see the meat in some of these areas, so I know I'm okay on here, but this part here, I will have to kind of trim down. I'm also going to take a trim off of this. As you can see, this end is much thicker than this side, which is going to give us kind of an uneven cooking. So what I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna trim this a little bit, but then also kind of take it in a little bit around here or so to make sure that this is about the same thickness as at this side, and that we don't have any major unevenness in the meat, so that it cooks all at the same rate. So let's get doing that. And again, there we go. So now the thickness of this is pretty close to the thickness of that, so we should have pretty even cooking throughout. I'm gonna show you. It is as trimmed as we're gonna get here. You know, pretty lean all the way across. Try to do that all the way around. Try to even that out as much as we can, just that there's no big humps or big lumps anywhere. Didn't really take out a whole bunch, as you can see on this side. Don't think I really need to. Like I said, I can see the meat almost right through this entire fat cap, so there wasn't a whole lot to begin with. There was just quite a bit around on this side, which I've trimmed out as much as I'm going to. I got a little deep there, but that's okay. It'll be fine. And that's it. So next I'm just gonna season this, and then we'll throw it in the fridge. Okay, here we are. So now we're just gonna season this. You don't really need to use any sort of binder on this at all. You can just use the moisture from the meat itself. There's plenty of it. I do normally use Worcestershire sauce, which I'm gonna use today. Again, not really necessary, but I just, you know, just how I've done them. So I'm gonna keep doing them that way. Just need a nice little coating so that the seasoning will stick to it. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna layer in some rubs here. The first one I'm going to use is this Tailgater's Party Rub. This is a great rub for pretty much anything anything, but it's really good on beef. So you've seen me use this in lots of other videos before. I really like this. So I'm gonna do it one more time. And just what you want is an even coating of this all the way throughout. You've seen seasoning done, so I'm not gonna show it to you in great detail, but let's just get going. In the perfect world, you would let this sweat out and then add your next layer. We're in my house and there's nothing perfect here, so we're just gonna go ahead and add the next layer on, and that's gonna be the Meat Church Holy Cow. I think this is a really good flavor and also gives me lots of great color, so I'm gonna add that on top. And what I'm doing is, usually when you're layering in your flavors, you wanna do your finer grain at the start, and then your coarser one on top to kind of help you build that bark. That's it on this side. Then I'm gonna flip her over and we'll do it again on the other side. And this is the side, this is how we're gonna put it into the smoker. We're gonna put it fat cap side down, and that's why I did the other side first, because my presentation side is this side. So when it comes out of the smoker and I'm gonna slice it and serve it to my guests, this is the way I want it to look. It's gonna be just a beautiful piece of meat. So again, Worcestershire sauce, just a little bit over top, Tailgaters. All right, there you go. So now we're trimmed, we're seasoned, and what I'm gonna do next is I'm just gonna put this on a tray and throw it in my fridge. I'm not smoking this until tomorrow, but I'm gonna leave this in the fridge uncovered overnight until I'm ready to throw it into the smoker tomorrow. We'll see you then. All right, here we go. It's about 2:15 in the morning. We're gonna get this thing going. We've got our Kamado Joe set up for about 250. We're gonna shoot for 250 to 275 throughout this entire cook. I've got my meter set up to alert me if I go way above that or well below that. That way I know where my heat temperature is at. And then let's set up our brisket. You probably can't see through that, but there is a water pan underneath there. It's just gonna help us keep some moisture in the grill. This is a bit of a big guy, but that's okay. And what you want to do is you want to try to make sure you squeeze this in for a couple of reasons. One, so that it fits nicely, and two, so that it stays nice and compact, and that it cooks beautifully. Just right down in the middle. Close that lid. And we'll let this puppy roll until it's time. About 5-6 hours or so. I'm gonna come back, have a look. We should be okay still by then, and maybe give it a little spritz, but we'll see what happens. All right, here we go. So this has been on here for about 5 hours or so. Just gonna have a look. You can see looking mighty good. Color's looking good. So a little bit moist all around. Looks great. Smells fantastic. I was going to give it a spritz, but I think I still might in some of these areas here. I'm just going to spritz some of the parts that are looking a little bit on the dry side. Not much on the top though. And what I'm using for a spritz is just a mix of apple juice and apple cider vinegar. Go ahead and close that lid and save that heat. And that's it. We'll let it go maybe for another half an hour or so and give it a go from there. All right, so here we go. We've now taken it off the smoker here. We're just gonna give it a little wrap. You can see it's got a nice little wiggle to it already. Just gonna use my spritz here and just gonna spritz down the paper to make this easier to fold around. Take this out for now and give this a wrap. And you wanna make sure it's nice and tight. The tighter the better. Go as tight as we can get it. We're going to put this probe back in, just try to kind of get back to this is the flat here and the point on this side. We're going to try to get it back to kind of the middle of that flat, and then we're going to put it back on the smoker, and we'll come back when it starts hitting about 195 internal temperature. I'm going to come back, but not really worrying too much about the temperature itself, more just so on the feel. So I'm going to poke it with an instant read probe, and if it's feeling nice and soft, like it's going in like a knife going through butter, then we're gonna call it a day and pull it off and let it rest. Probably gonna be done around, I would say 200 to 203 degrees, because we did low and slow the entire time. It is possible it was done earlier, and that's why I'm gonna check it at 195, and that's when I'm gonna start checking. I'll see you then. All right, here we go. So we're now reading at about just under 200 degrees. So I'm just gonna go and give it a probe. Looks like the point's pretty much ready to go. Looking at the flat, oh yeah, there's little to no resistance here, a little bit tough here still. And about 204 there, nothing there, 204, about 210, 212 there. I think we probably could go a little bit longer yet, just because I am getting a bit of resistance here, a little bit tight yet, so not quite ready. I'm gonna let it go to about 205. And we'll go from there. All right, here we are. So we're gonna be using a Titan Deep Freeze Arctic Zone cooler. I've probed it, everything was like butter. When I probed it in and out, internal temperature was around 205 degrees pretty much everywhere, other than the point, which was at about 210, 212 degrees. So what I'm gonna do now is, you can see on there that I've got it with some towels underneath. I normally would vent this. I would open up the wrap if I had wrapped it in foil. Since I wrapped in paper, I don't need to do that. My bark is going to be set in there. It's going to be fine. My next step is I'm just going to kind of fill up the rest of this wood with more towels and just let it sit in here for a little bit. Nice and warm. We're gonna rest for a minimum an hour and a half to 2 hours. It'll still be plenty warm. You want to fill up as much as the space as you can, so that's why I'm using kind of two. I got 2 towels inside or underneath and 2 towels on top, and that's it. This is an insulated cooler, so it's going to trap all that heat and moisture in there. We're going to keep it in there, like I said, for the next hour and a half to 2 hours, and then we'll give it a slice. All right, so here we go. So this is rested in the cooler for a couple of hours now. It's the internal temperature is still showing at about 185 degrees. So still a little warm, hence why I'm wearing gloves. Let's just slice into it and see what it looks like. I think it looks fantastic. Color's great. So very important with the brisket, you gotta slice with or against the grain. In this case, we've got our grain kind of running this way, so I'm just gonna tilt it a little bit this way so I can get slicing. You know what? I'm gonna slice down the middle here first so we can take a look. Hopefully you can see there. Oh, I'm not even squeezing it, it's just kind of dripping out. Fantastic. Look at that. Make a clap. Bop, 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 bop. That is perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Holds up on its own. Breaks apart. Little to no resistance. Unbelievable. Tastes so good. Real good. Excellent brisket, great flavor, great beefy flavor. That charcoal and that smoke. It's light, not overpowering, but definitely there. So good. If you like what you saw here today, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss out on any content. As always, until next time, I'll catch you on the next G-Rod Grills. I'm gonna go eat some more of this.